The law of protection. For 15,000 years, the Galactic Council had known peace. Not the fragile kind born of exhaustion or fear, but engineered peace, regulated, audited, enforced by treaties older than some stars' current fusion cycles. Conflict was no longer decided by fleets or soldiers, but by committees, algorithms, and corrective protocols. War was a relic, displayed in museums and cautionary simulations. When humanity joined the Council, they were welcomed politely and watched carefully. Humans came from a loud, violent history. Their archives were full of wars, genocides, and weapons that unsettled even veteran Council historians. Yet, in the modern age, humans appeared tame, cooperative, almost eager to prove they had outgrown their past. They signed every accord placed before them. They dismantled fleets. They sealed arsenals. They accepted population caps and behavioral oversight with only minor protest. What truly fascinated the Council, however, was not human aggression, but human attachment. Humans bonded intensely with their offspring, excessively by Council standards. Parents would risk everything, status, survival, even species-level stability, for a single child. Council psychologists labeled it maladaptive empathy. Economists called it inefficient. Strategists quietly flagged it as dangerous. For decades, it remained a curiosity, until the vote. The proposal was introduced under sterile language, custodial relocation of at-risk sapients. It cited statistics, neural scans, predictive models. Human children, it argued, were raised in environments that fostered emotional volatility. Their parents' intense bonding impaired rational decision-making. Left unchecked, this trait could destabilize galactic harmony in future generations. The solution was humane, temporary, legal. Human children would be relocated to Council-supervised sanctuaries, raised under neutral caregivers, taught emotional regulation from an early age. Parents would be allowed monitored communication. Reunification could occur eventually. The measure passed by a narrow margin. Implementation was swift. Council fleets arrived at human worlds without weapons charged, banners of peace glowing along their hulls. Legal writs were transmitted. Local human authorities protested, stalled, demanded appeals, but Council law superseded planetary governance. No shots were fired. Children were escorted from homes, schools, medical centers. Some cried. Some were too young to understand. Others asked simple questions that translators struggled to render neutrally. Why can't my mom come? Did we do something wrong? When are you bringing us back? Parents screamed, pleaded. Some tried to resist and were restrained, not violently, but efficiently. The Council prided itself on restraint. Within 6 standard hours, over 12,000 human children had been relocated across Council space. The Council declared the operation a success. On Earth, the silence that followed was more troubling than the protests. Human governments convened emergency sessions, but no declarations were made. Fleets remained docked. Weapons systems stayed cold. Diplomats requested hearings, filed injunctions, submitted appeals through proper channels. To the Council, this was reassuring. Humanity was emotional, yes, but still civilized. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 48 hours later. Delegates filled the chamber with bioluminescent plumes, shifting carapaces, and holographic avatars. At the center podium stood the human representative, Ambassador Mara Ellison. She did not shout. She did not threaten. She simply looked tired. Esteemed counselors, she said, voice steady. Humanity formally objects to the custodial relocation protocol as applied to our species. We request the immediate return of our children. A murmur rippled through the chamber. A senior counselor responded, tone patient. Ambassador Ellison, the decision was made in accordance with Council law. Your species will benefit from. You misunderstand. Ellison interrupted softly. This is not a negotiation. Several delegates bristled. Interrupting a counselor was a breach of decorum. Ellison continued anyway. You believe you acted lawfully. Perhaps you did. But law does not supersede biology, and it does not supersede history. A counselor from an elder species leaned forward. Is this a threat? Ellison met their gaze. No, she said. It is a clarification. She activated her console. Behind her, a single sentence appeared on the chamber's central display, translated into every known language. You took our children. For the first time in 15,000 years, the chamber fell completely silent. You categorized them as citizens, Ellison said, as assets, as variables. That was your first error. She paused, choosing her words with surgical care. You did not take citizens. You did not take future workers or potential soldiers. You took our children. The council chair responded coolly. Ambassador, emotional rhetoric will not influence this body. Humanity agreed to council authority. Ellison nodded slowly. Yes, we agreed to peace. She looked around the chamber, at beings who had never heard a human voice without translation filters smoothing its edges. There is a human saying, she continued. It predates our space flight. It predates our nations. Her voice hardened, not with anger, but with certainty. Do not come between a species and its young. The chair dismissed the session shortly after. Officially, the council recorded the exchange as emotional protest without actionable consequence. What the record did not show was what happened next. Across Earth and human colonies, parents stopped going to work. Military personnel quietly removed insignia. Ancient facilities sealed, archived, forgotten even by most humans, began receiving authentication codes that had not been used in millennia. Deep beneath human soil and steel, systems woke up. Not in anger, in purpose. The galaxy still believed the peace held. Humanity knew better. What peace cost humanity? The first signs that something had gone wrong did not come from human worlds. They came from the archives. Senior analyst Kell of the Kethri Combine had reviewed over 12,000 compliance histories in her long career. Most species resisted the council at some point, usually loudly, briefly, and unsuccessfully. Humanity's file, by contrast, was unsettling in its neatness. Every demand accepted, every inspection passed, every restriction acknowledged without retaliation. It was not how survivors of a death world were supposed to behave. At the council's request, TL began a routine predictive review, human reaction probability to extended custodial separation. The algorithm stalled, then returned a probability tree, so complex it had to be compressed IU. Projected escalation curves spiked, then vanished, then spiked again at levels normally reserved for extinction events. Kell frowned. Run historical context, she ordered. The system began pulling human data that had not been accessed since first contact. Not the sanitized summaries prepared for diplomats, but raw history. Wars fought with sticks and stones, then fire, then machines. Entire cities erased. Species-wide mobilizations triggered by single acts of perceived injustice. What caught her attention was not the violence. It was the restraint. Again and again, human records showed cycles of devastation followed by deliberate self-limitation. After each catastrophe, humanity imposed rules on itself. Codes of war, protections for non-combatants, taboos around certain weapons. Progress measured not by conquest, but by what they chose not to do anymore. Peace, Kell realized, had not been gifted to humanity. It had been paid for. She escalated her findings. Meanwhile, the Council monitored human space with growing unease. No fleets mobilized. No weapon signatures spiked. Human ships moved along trade lanes as usual, except for one anomaly. They were traveling in silence. Transponders active. Weapons cold. But encrypted internal channels pulsed with traffic too dense to decode in real time. Requests to audit the communications were denied under the same legal frameworks humanity had once accepted. A junior counselor dismissed the concern. They are grieving. Emotional processing takes time. Then the first containment report arrived from Sanctuary Theta 7. The human children were compliant. Calm even. They followed instructions. Ate when told. Learned quickly. But caregivers noted something disturbing. The children asked questions constantly. Not about their surroundings, but about time. How long is temporary? When do humans stop looking? Do you know what a promise is? The questions were logged, flagged, and ignored. Back in the archives, Tell dug deeper. She discovered entire branches of human science marked voluntarily sealed. Weapons research not prohibited by treaty, abandoned anyway. Artificial intelligences capable of autonomous warfare placed into ethical stasis, their cores entombed beneath human worlds. Fleet doctrines built around total annihilation, archived, not deleted. A footnote in an old council assessment resurfaced in her mind. Humanity demonstrates an unusual capacity to self-restrict. Recommend continued observation. The footnote had no follow-up. Tell requested access to humanity's pre-accord military doctrines. The request was automatically denied. Instead, she found something worse. A compliance appendix listing concessions made for galactic harmony. Humanity had surrendered control of several key jump nodes. Independent strategic AIs. Planetary defense arrays exceeding council thresholds. Entire classes of weaponry labeled species inappropriate. The final line chilled her. Humanity accepts these terms to ensure no child ever experiences total war again. Kel's frills flattened in alarm. She ran a new simulation, this time removing one variable, human restraint. The model crashed twice before producing a result. Council peace infrastructure failure, 72 hours. Projected council cohesion collapse, 30 days. She submitted an emergency advisory. It was downgraded to non-critical speculation. Elsewhere, small things began to happen. Council surveillance drones experienced micro-failures near human systems. Not attacks, just errors. Navigation beacons drifted off calibration. Enforcement fleets found their logistics chains delayed by bureaucratic obstacles that, somehow, only affected them. Human diplomats continued to attend sessions, continued to argue law, continued to lose. Their demeanor never changed. What unnerved observers most was that humanity did not issue threats. Threats implied negotiation. Instead, old allies, species who had once fought humans and survived, received short, private messages. This is not your conflict. Please stay out of it. Those who asked why received no response. Tkel watched the council chamber from the observation gallery as another motion was passed to extend custodial oversight by a further 10 standard years. The vote was comfortable this time. Relief rippled through the delegates. Peace was holding. She whispered to herself, barely audible over the chamber's hum. No, peace is ending. That same hour, deep beneath Earth's crust, an ancient vault completed its final systems check. Lights flickered on for the first time in 9,000 years. A dormant human intelligence, designed not to conquer, but to win, finished booting. Its first query was simple. Status of human offspring. When the answer returned, the system did not calculate probabilities. It executed a single directive, one written into its core long before humanity learned to leave its star. Recover. The galaxy still believed peace was a permanent state. Humanity had always known better. The species that remembers how to fight. The Galactic Council realized it had miscalculated when the humans stopped asking. 4 weeks after the relocations, human representatives flooded council channels with petitions, appeals, and procedural challenges. They quoted precedent, invoked subclauses, and requested independent review panels. It was tedious, orderly, and familiar. Then abruptly it ended. No more filings. No more emergency sessions. No more speeches about law. Human delegates still attended council meetings, but they spoke only when spoken to, and even then, rarely. Observers mistook the silence for resignation. The final warning came from a civilian channel. It was not encrypted. It was not routed through diplomatic networks. It was a mother. The transmission originated from a human agricultural world, unimportant by any strategic measure. The woman stood in an empty home, a child's drawing still taped to the walls behind her. Her voice did not shake. "You have our children," she said, looking directly into the recording lens. "You will return them." She paused. "You have 1 hour." The message propagated across the council's public net before moderators could suppress it. Most delegates laughed. Emotional outbursts were expected from humans. They had no legal weight. The hour expired. Nothing exploded. Instead, the galaxy's infrastructure began to fail. Jump gates along council-controlled corridors slipped out of synchronization by fractions of a microsecond, enough to make transit unsafe. Enforcement fleets attempting to reroute found their navigational databases distinct from beacon telemetry. Long-range sensors reported empty space where stations should have been, and stations where nothing had existed before. Panic followed confusion. The Council issued emergency commands. Fleets were ordered to secure custodial sanctuaries. They arrived too late. Sanctuary Theta 7's security systems never register a breach. No alarms. No hull damage. Guards were called standing at their posts. Then, nothing. When consciousness returned, the facility was intact. The children were gone. Left behind, engraved into the central operations console, was a single human phrase translated into Council standard. This was mercy. The same scene played out across Council space. Orbital sanctuaries, planetary academies, supposedly impregnable vault stations. Human children vanished without bloodshed, without visible force, without any clear method of entry or exit. Council analysts struggled to comprehend how. Human retrieval teams did not fight defenses. They bypassed them. Ancient access codes, compromised long before humanity joined the Council, activated forgotten maintenance corridors. Nanophased operators moved through blind spots the Council had never believed needed guarding. Human AIs, once shackled by treaty, now operated in tightly constrained windows, long enough to solve the problem, short enough to vanish before detection. It was not chaos. It was choreography. The first armed confrontation occurred at the Talaris Junction. A Council enforcement fleet jumped in to intercept a human retrieval carrier exiting with rescued children aboard. Council doctrine dictated escalation through presence, not firepower. The Admiral opened a channel, prepared to issue a formal cease and desist. The human ship did not respond. Instead, space bent. The Council fleet's targeting systems collapsed under sensory overload. Gravity wells inverted. Hulls groaned as inertial dampeners strained to compensate for physics that no longer obeyed local constants. No weapon struck. No ships were destroyed. Yet within 3 minutes, every Council vessel was drifting, powerless, intact, and terrified. The human carrier transmitted a single data packet before jumping out. We are not at war. We are retrieving our children. Interfere again, and mercy will not be repeated. The Talaris Admiral surrendered without being asked. Across the galaxy, species that had once dismissed humanity as emotional began revisiting old assumptions. Archived footage of early human warfare resurfaced, battles where humans fought not for territory, but for survival. Wars where defeat meant annihilation, and victory meant endurance. Humanity had not forgotten how to fight. They had chosen not to. Now that choice was gone. On a secure channel visible only to human command, status indicators flickered from red to green as children were reunited with families. Crying parents, shaking hands, laughter that sounded almost painful in its intensity. A human commander watched the feeds in silence. An aide finally spoke. 78% recovered. Council resistance is collapsing. The commander nodded once. Good, she said. Pause all further strikes. The aide hesitated. Pause. She turned, eyes hard but steady. They needed to feel it. Just enough. She looked back at the screen, where a small boy clung to his mother, as if afraid she might disappear again. Now, the commander continued quietly, they'll listen. For the first time in 15,000 years, the galaxy understood a terrible truth. Peace had never been guaranteed by laws or councils. It had existed because humanity allowed it to, and humanity had just remembered why it had learned to fight in the first place. The end of peace. The Galactic Council did not fall in flames. It unraveled. News of the retrievals spread faster than official statements could contain them. Sanctuary administrators resigned en masse. Enforcement admirals requested reassignment. or asylum. Member species quietly withdrew their delegations, citing internal stability concerns that fooled no one. The illusion of control was gone. For 15,000 years, the Council had defined peace as the absence of force. Now the galaxy watched human fleets drift at the edges of key systems. Visible, unthreatening, and undeniably capable of ending any resistance they chose. No declarations of war were issued. None were needed. Emergency sessions dissolved into accusation and fear. Smaller species demanded guarantees that their children would never be subject to similar protective measures. Elder powers, long accustomed to directing the Council, found their authority questioned for the first time in recorded history. The Council's greatest weapon, its moral legitimacy, had failed. 3 standard days after the final child was returned, humanity requested a full-spectrum broadcast, not from a military channel, from a civilian one. The speaker was not a general, an admiral, or even a politician. She was a human teacher, chosen deliberately, Council analysts would later realize. Someone whose life had never touched a battlefield. She stood before a plain backdrop. No insignia, no flags. "We are not here to threaten you," she began, her voice calm but unyielding. "You have already seen what humanity can do when pushed beyond endurance." The broadcast reached every system, every habitat, every Council archive. "For 15,000 years, you have called this era peace," she continued. "But peace enforced by authority alone is not peace. It is compliance." Behind her, images appeared, human children reunited with families, parents holding them as if afraid to let go. Silence fell across the galaxy. "You told yourselves this was necessary, that you acted for stability, that no one species mattered more than the whole." Her eyes hardened. "That is the logic of empires, not communities." The Council chair attempted to interrupt. The feed did not allow it. "Humanity learned a long time ago that peace without boundaries is just delayed violence," the woman said. "We set our boundaries. You crossed them." She paused, letting the weight of it settle. "Our children are inviolable. This is not a human law. From this moment forward, it is a galactic one." A new charter appeared across the broadcast, simple, brutally clear. No governing body may remove or control another species' offspring. No ideology, prediction model, or stability algorithm supersedes that boundary. Violations will be answered directly, not debated, not sanctioned. Answered. "We do not seek to rule you," the woman said. "We seek to prevent this from ever happening again." The implication was unmistakable. Humanity would act as the final guarantor, not of peace, but of limits. The Council was given a choice: dissolve and reform under the new charter, or be rendered irrelevant by the simple fact that no one trusted it anymore. Most species chose survival. The Council, as it had existed, formally disbanded within the week. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. Old rivalries resurfaced, but stopped short of war. Disputes were settled carefully, with an unspoken awareness that certain lines now carried consequences beyond diplomacy. Parents across species held their young a little closer, comforted by a rule enforced not by bureaucracy, but by certainty. Human fleets withdrew from contested space, but they did not vanish. They remained visible, patient, and silent. Watching, an alien historian, recording the era's collapse and rebirth, struggled to summarize it in terms his species would understand. His final entry read, "The Council believed peace was the absence of violence. Humanity taught us it is the presence of boundaries." On Earth, life slowly resumed. Cities reopened. Soldiers returned their insignia to storage. Vaults sealed once more, not destroyed, just closed. Humanity had not embraced war. They had simply refused helplessness. In the last official transmission humanity sent to the galactic record, the words were brief and unadorned. "We upheld peace for 15,000 years. You broke it in one afternoon. We will not make that mistake again." The message was archived, studied, and quietly feared, because every species understood the truth, now etched into history. Humanity was not the galaxy's greatest threat. They were its final boundary.